The first time Emily saw Daniel after 7 years, she was standing in a wedding dress, holding a bouquet she had forgotten to put down. He was standing across the street. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then Daniel looked at the ring on her finger. Emily followed his eyes. She had spent 7 years trying to forget the way he used to look at her. She had not expected to remember it so quickly. Emily. She heard her name from behind her and turned. Her fiancé Marcus was walking toward her with 2 coffees in his hands. Daniel stepped back. Emily said nothing. Marcus smiled, unaware of what had just happened. Sorry. I got stuck behind that delivery truck. Emily looked over her shoulder. Daniel was gone. That evening, she told herself it had been a coincidence. A strange one, but still a coincidence. The next morning, she found an envelope under the door of the small bridal shop where she worked. There was no name on it. Inside was a photograph. It was old and slightly bent at the corner. Emily was 19 in the picture. She was sitting on the hood of Daniel's old blue car, laughing at something outside the frame. Daniel was beside her. On the back of the photograph, someone had written 4 words. I came back, Emily. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she folded the photograph and put it inside her drawer. She did not tell Marcus. Emily had known Daniel since high school. They had grown up in the same neighborhood, worked summer jobs together, and spent most evenings sitting on the steps behind her mother's house. Daniel had been the first person she told about her plans to become a wedding designer. He had been the first person to say she could actually do it. And he had been the first person she had ever loved. At 22, Daniel had left town for a construction job 3 states away. He promised he would come back after 6 months. He never did. At first, Emily called him every night, then every few days, then once a week. Eventually, his phone stopped working. His old apartment was empty. His mother told Emily that Daniel had taken another job and did not want anyone contacting him. Emily waited for him anyway, for nearly a year. Then she stopped waiting. Her mother had been sick, money had been tight, and Emily had started working full-time. She could not keep building her life around someone who had disappeared without an explanation. Marcus entered her life 2 years later. He was steady. He showed up when he said he would. When Emily's mother needed surgery, Marcus drove her to every appointment. When Emily opened her little bridal shop, Marcus spent 3 weekends helping her paint the walls. He never made big promises. He simply kept the small ones. Eventually, Emily realized that being loved by someone dependable felt very different from being loved by someone unpredictable. She said yes when Marcus proposed. 3 months later, they chose a wedding date. And now Daniel was standing across the street. Emily tried to forget the photograph, but the next day, she received another envelope. This time there was no picture. There was a note. I know I have no right to ask anything from you, but before you marry him, please let me explain why I left. Emily read it twice. Then she tore it in half. She did not want an explanation. At least that was what she told herself. That afternoon, Daniel walked into the bridal shop. Emily froze. He looked older than she remembered. His hair was shorter. There was a scar near his eyebrow. He wore a simple work jacket and carried an old leather bag. I won't stay long, he said. You shouldn't have come. I know. Then why did you? Daniel looked at her. Because I spent 7 years wishing I had one chance to tell you the truth. Emily crossed her arms. You had 7 years. I know. Why didn't you call? Daniel lowered his eyes. My father died 3 days before I was supposed to come home. Emily said nothing. He left behind debts I didn't know about. People were coming after my mother for money. I took the job because it paid more than anything I could get here. I thought I'd be gone for a few months. He paused. Then I got hurt. Emily's expression changed. I broke my leg at work. I couldn't work for almost 5 months. When I finally got back on my feet, I was ashamed. I had no money, no home, nothing to offer you. You could have called. I should have. That isn't an answer. No, Daniel said quietly. It isn't. Emily looked away. Daniel reached into his bag. He placed a small box on the counter. I bought this for you before I left. Emily did not touch it. I carried it for 7 years. She opened the box. Inside was a cheap silver necklace with a tiny blue stone. It was not valuable, but she remembered it. She had once pointed at the necklace in a store window and said she liked it. Daniel had laughed and told her he would never spend that much money on a necklace. He had bought it anyway. Emily closed the box. "You should go." Daniel nodded. He walked toward the door. Then Emily said, "Daniel." He turned. "Are you staying?" He hesitated. "Yes." That answer frightened her more than anything else. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel did not chase her. He did not send flowers. He did not ask her to leave Marcus. Instead, he found work repairing houses in town. Emily saw him once at a grocery store. Another time, she saw him helping an elderly neighbor carry boxes upstairs. He seemed determined to build a life without asking her to be part of it. That was what made it harder. One Saturday, Emily's mother asked her to drive her to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. When Emily arrived, Daniel was already there. He was sitting beside her mother in the waiting room. "What are you doing here?" Emily asked. Her mother looked embarrassed. "I called him." Emily stared at Daniel. He stood. "Your mother needed someone to drive her. I was nearby." "You didn't need to." "I know." Her mother looked between them. "Emily, don't be angry with him because I asked for help." "I'm not angry." "You look angry." Emily sighed. Daniel almost smiled. It was the first time she had seen that smile in 7 years. She hated how familiar it felt. After the appointment, her mother fell asleep in the back seat. Emily drove. Daniel sat beside her. For several miles, neither spoke. Finally, Emily said, "I waited for you." Daniel looked out the window. "I know." "No, you don't." She gripped the steering wheel. "I waited every Friday because you said you'd come back on a Friday. I went to the bus station for 3 months. Daniel swallowed. "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you weren't there." "I know." Emily stopped at a red light. "Do you understand what you did to me?" Daniel nodded. "I do now." The light turned green. They drove on. A week later, Marcus found the photograph. He had gone to Emily's shop to surprise her. The drawer was open. The photograph was on the counter. Marcus picked it up. When Emily walked in, he was holding it. "Who is he?" Emily stopped. She could have lied. Instead, she said, "Someone I loved." Marcus stared at her. "Loved? Before you? Is he back?" Emily nodded. Marcus put the photograph down. "Do you still love him?" Emily opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus saw the answer before she said it. He left without shouting. That night, Emily sat alone on the floor of her apartment. Her wedding dress hung in the closet. Her phone stayed silent. She had expected Daniel's return to make her confused. She had not expected it to make her question the life she had carefully built. The next morning, Marcus came back. He sat across from her at the kitchen table. "I need to know something," he said. Emily waited. "If Daniel had never returned, would you still marry me?" She looked at him. "Yes." "Then why doesn't that answer feel enough anymore?" Emily began to cry. "I don't know." Marcus nodded slowly. "That is what I was afraid of." He took off his engagement ring and placed it on the table. "I love you too much to marry someone who is wondering if she should." Emily stared at the ring. "Marcus, please." "I'm not angry." He stood. "I just don't want to spend my marriage competing with a man who isn't even in the room." Then he left. 3 days before the wedding, Emily canceled everything. The calls started immediately. Relatives were angry. Her mother was disappointed. The venue refused to return the deposit. Friends told her she was making a terrible mistake. Marcus did not call. Daniel did not call either. For the first time, Emily realized that neither man was going to make the decision for her. She had to live with it. That evening, she went to the old neighborhood where she and Daniel had grown up. The house behind her mother's place was empty now. She sat on the back steps. Daniel found her there. "You canceled the wedding," he said. Emily looked at him. "How did you know?" "Your mother told my mother." "My mother told me." Emily almost laughed. "I thought you would be happy." Daniel sat beside her, leaving space between them. "I am not." She turned toward him. "Why?" Because I don't want you to choose me because I came back. Emily looked confused. Daniel continued. I disappeared. I hurt you. I know that. If you canceled your wedding because you finally realized you don't love Marcus, then that's your decision. But if you canceled it because you're scared of losing me again, then you shouldn't be with me. Emily stared at the ground. You came back too late. I know. You can't just come back and expect everything to go back to the way it was. I don't. Then what do you want? Daniel took a breath. A chance to know you again. Emily looked at him. Not the 19-year-old version of you. Not the girl who waited at the bus station. You now. She was quiet. I don't know if I can trust you. You shouldn't yet. That answer stayed with her. The next morning, Daniel came to the bridal shop. He did not ask Emily out. He helped repair a broken display shelf. The following week, he fixed the leaking sink. A month later, when Emily's mother needed help getting to another appointment, Daniel drove her. He never asked Emily to forgive him. He simply kept showing up. Slowly something changed. Emily started having coffee with him, then lunch, then long conversations after work. They argued sometimes. Daniel admitted he had spent years blaming himself for everything. Emily admitted she had used Marcus's reliability to protect herself from ever being hurt again. Neither of them tried to make the other look innocent. That was what made things different. 6 months after the canceled wedding, Emily received a call from the hospital. Daniel had been injured at a construction site. She drove there without thinking. When she entered his room, he was awake. He smiled weakly. You came. Emily stood beside the bed. Of course I came. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. I was afraid you wouldn't. Emily took his hand. I was afraid I would. He squeezed her fingers. She stayed. Not because she had forgotten what happened. Not because the past had suddenly become unimportant. She stayed because Daniel had finally stopped asking her to trust his promises and had started proving himself through his actions. A year later, Emily reopened the bridal shop after expanding it into a larger space. On the first morning, Daniel arrived carrying a toolbox. You don't work here, she said. I know. Then why are you here? He smiled. The sink probably needs fixing. Emily laughed. Then she pulled him close. There was no big proposal. No expensive ring. No perfect speech. A few months later, they got married in a small garden behind her mother's house. There were no dramatic announcements. Marcus did not return. Emily never regretted ending that relationship, and she never blamed him for leaving. He had deserved someone who could choose him without hesitation. Her mother cried through most of the ceremony. Daniel's hand shook when he placed the ring on Emily's finger. Afterward, while everyone was eating, Emily noticed something hanging from Daniel's collar. A small blue stone. She touched it. The necklace, she said. Daniel nodded. I finally gave it to you. Emily smiled. You kept it for 7 years. I was hoping I'd get another chance. She looked at him. You did. Daniel smiled. This time, neither of them looked away. Years later, Emily would sometimes think about the day she saw him across the street in her wedding dress. For a long time, she believed the hardest part had been deciding between two men. It wasn't. The hardest part had been deciding whether she could trust her own heart again. And in the end, Daniel hadn't won her back by returning. He had won her back by staying.